Okay, so naming conventions for this, and this is the continuation basically off of creating the leg. The last thing that we didn't do with the leg is we didn't label this, and we should always label everything. So I will go ahead and take this and call this one, I believe the notes call it left up leg, and hopefully I'm doing this correctly. And then this one's like left leg, even though it's left knee. I don't know if this one's left foot or because I don't have the notes up, but refer to your notes on the naming conventions, but name everything, okay? So I'll just call this what it is, left ankle. It's probably called left foot. So let's call it left foot. Hit the down arrow to get to this one, and call this one the left ball. Debating on whether I should put left foot, left ball, whatever. I'll tap the down arrow and call this left toe and left toe end. And I'm camel casing just like you would do in programming. Basically, each word after the first one, the first word starts with all lowercase, and each word after that starts with the uppercase letter. That's basically it. So, left foot, and I really should pull the notes out, but I think you guys get the idea. Just make sure you label all of your joints, okay? What we're going to do is create the left foot roll, and to align it, we're going to do something very simple. We'll come up to, pop out of this view, come up to the top here to skeleton, down to joint tool. It is a complete separate system, okay? I'm going to show the geometry, and I'll put the geometry to a reference, so I'll click this little icon until it goes to R, which means reference, which means I cannot select it, okay? I'm going to use one of my modifier keys, or hotkeys if you will, for snap to point, okay? Snap to point could be vertices, control vertices, and different things like joints and such. So I could either click this, but you'll see that if I hold down the V key, as in very good, it activates it. So I hit V, that looks as though it's pressed in. So I'll hold down V, and what I'll do is I'll snap this thing to the joint at the very top. So snap it to that joint there. It looks as though that's pretty good. Okay, and that should be aligning it with my heel for the most part. If not, what I could do is I could snap it to one of these guys. So I'll go to my side view here and go in here like this, hold down my middle mouse button to allow me to move this, and I'll go to where this heel is going to do the rotations, okay? So I'll kind of come in here a little bit closer and just let it kind of sit like this. I can move this at any point and update it, so I'm not really too worried. This looks as though it's at the very end of this heel. It looks like it's aligned really well, so I'm going to go ahead and go with that. And what I'll do is now I can just hide the geometry because I really only need the geometry to match it up with where that part is going to go. Okay, so I'll hide the geometry. The next parts that I do is I'll hold down V, the V key to snap again, and I'll continue to draw. So I'll hold the V key down, come over here, and click with my left mouse button, and you'll see that it snaps to there. And that's the same thing I did up here. Okay, I did not click on the joint because then Maya thinks that I want to draw from that joint. I need to click away from the joint. So in other words, for this joint, since I'm already drawing a different chain out, it wouldn't matter in this case. But the first joint that I draw out, I do not want to click on another joint. Okay, I want to click away from it, holding down the V key. Once I move my mouse, it'll snap like this guy. Okay, come up here, release my left mouse button, hold down V still, left mouse button, click and drag, and it snaps to the next joint. Okay, now these are going to be pretty good. I need to hit enter to commit to this, and what I have is a separate chain. So if I were to hit W and move this, you see that it's a complete separate chain. It's just aligned with the other skeletal structure that I created for the leg. Okay, now there's different ways of making this a little bit more nice for us. Like for the geometry, I could have had this part like this guy go down here to the base of the foot, and this toe end go down here to this part of the foot. That's a nice clean way of working. It would look just fine. This way is another way we can work, and we can get it to work for us perfectly. But at any time, you guys could really move these. So you could take this and hit the down arrow to get to a joint location, and this really could have been like this, okay, basically. And then these would have snapped to their corresponding joints. So if I were to hold down V and click and drag, snap that guy, hit the down arrow, hold down V, click and drag, snap, hit the down arrow, and this is just pick walking, hitting the down or up arrow, or the left and right arrow as well. V, click and drag, and there we go. So I could set it up like that as well. It really doesn't matter, to be honest, because wherever this rotates, we're going to tell it to rotate and affect some of the vertices. But a lot of people you will see like to keep the joints somewhere in a general area of the vertices that they're going to control, okay? So this would be okay. What I'll do in this scenario is that I'll take this, because we now have to orient our joints, and I just hit the geometry layer. I'll hit F8 on my keyboard this time, so F8. That puts me in component mode. And just because I was working previously, this, where my icon is, or my little cursor, is turned on. Okay, this little question mark for miscellaneous component, showing the axes of my joints. Okay, so what I can do is I'll take this one, and X is pointing to its child, which is fine, and I'll take it and have the Z's point outward this way, so that it's working along with the leg, the way that the Z axes are pointing with the leg, okay, that I had drawn out earlier. So I'll hit E to evoke my rotate tool, hold down J, the J key, click and drag this until it snaps, and that's looking pretty good. I could take these other two since they are pretty close to the same, and I'll try it. I'll just, I mean, this one's at a bit of an angle, so I'll try it. Rotate tool, hold down J, and click and drag these till they snap, and that actually looks pretty nice. So that worked out pretty good. Now the top one is one that I can be a little bit more lenient with. So basically, what I would do is align the X axis. So hold down J and snap this way, right? And the Z looks good, so that's pretty good. But the X axis, generally we'd have it pointing kind of up like this. And for my side view, you'll see that I can use my, I'll hit the spacebar to pop in here. I can use my handle here, how this green bar is going across like this, to align it with the bone a little bit better, so that the X is pretty close to perfectly aligned with that bone there. I could have something like that working in this scenario, or I could have the X pointing like straight up like that. Okay. Either or is going to work just fine. I'm really only interested in this case of the Z axes bending in the correct axis direction or orientation, if you will. Okay. So this ankle would bend around this way. But for the X, it could either go this way or you can have it going straight up. So I could drag it like this, and I could be happy with that if I was going to do some other rotations based off of that angle. Okay, but that ankle is really not going to do much. So either like this or having it point out like that would work in this scenario. If it doesn't work, then you can go back and change the orientation of this at almost any time. Okay, so that looks pretty good for the reverse foot setup. And what we'll have to do is set the, yeah, we'll have to set the IK handles on the leg and have these follow along. But we can label this, and again, I don't have my notes up, so refer to your notes, but I'm just going to label it just for good practice. And I'll hit F8 to get back to object mode, and this is going to be left, and I'll do capital R instead of typing out reverse completely, just rev for reverse. So left rev heel, okay. I'll hit enter to commit to that name, and then I'll type the down arrow to jump to this child here. So I hit the down arrow on my keyboard, and this is going to be left rev for reverse, so that I know it's the reverse setup. Left rev toe, toe end or left rev toe would be fine. Would be fine. I think I said find. That's good stuff. So I'll click the down arrow to get to this, and I'll hit left. Oh yeah. I gotta kind of click on this guy here. Left rev ball, since it's the ball of the foot. Keep hitting caps lock. There we go. I'll hit the down arrow, and this is going to be left rev foot or ankle. I think I said foot. Doesn't matter. I'll hit enter, and that is fantastic. Awesome little icon there popping up. Okay, so that's pretty good. Before I move on any further with these, what I'll do, just for good practice, is I'll select the root joint of each branch or each chain and make sure there's no orientations in here. And just to make sure that we have not done any connections at this point, so I'll go up to Modify, down to Freeze Transformations. And I'll do the same thing with the leg. I'll click on this guy, which is the root for the leg, and I can either hit G on my keyboard to redo the command, which was Modify Freeze Transformations, or simply come up to Modify, down to Freeze Transformations, and click that with my left mouse button, and it should zero out our rotations. Okay, pretty good. Now we're working with a nice setup. So what I can do is bring up my outliner, because you should always work with that open. And I have the left up leg, that's this whole setup, which is going to be the main leg, and I have the left reverse setup. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hide this left reverse setup, and I am going to close Skype, because Skype's obnoxious sometimes, getting these awesome messages. Alright, sorry about that. But I'll take the left reverse heel and I'll go ahead and hide it, Control H. So I'm hiding that to work with this guy. And basically what I'm going to do is go up to Skeleton, down to IK Handle Tool option box, and they pop up right here. So I'll minimize my outliner. And instead of a single chain, I'm going to drop this down and do a rotate plane solver for my settings. And I'm going to turn sticky on. Okay, that's the only thing I change, those two attributes. Come over here, click from the top of the leg to the ankle or foot as we labeled it. But really it's the ankle, so it's easier to say it that way. And I'm going to use that reverse foot, or that IK handle tool again. But first let's call this one the left leg IK, so we know it belongs to the left leg itself. Okay. Now I'll go up to skeleton, down to IK handle tool. All my settings are there, but this time it's going to be the foot. I only need the foot to bend a certain way, not rotate, because our feet do not rotate. If it's alien or something like that, that would be different. So I'm going to drop this down, go to single chain solver, aliens, robots, whatever, with it can actually rotate this part of their foot. We can use rotate plane solver for. Otherwise, we're going to use a single chain solver, which only allows it to bend the way that it should bend. Like if you're getting into runner pose or runner's pose and you see your kind of your toes bend upward in one axis. Okay. With the single chain solver and sticky turned on, I will go from the left foot slash or ankle down to the ball. Okay. I'm going to do that one more time. And you'll see that my tool is right here, so I could click the tool and it brings up my IK handle tool, and that is a single chain solver again. I'll go from here, the ball, to the toe. Okay. And I didn't label that last one, so let's go back to our outliner and do that now. So I'm just going to go ahead and close the tool settings, and I'll go up to, well, I have it right down here, so I'll just click there. And there is this guy, and I'll double click it because I can name it in the outliner, and I'll call it left ball IK. Double click this one and call it left toe and IK. It could just be left toe IK. Doesn't really matter. Okay, just find a naming convention and stick with it. Again, there are the notes on this one, and they have kind of a funky naming convention. That's why I don't really have it off the top of my head. Okay, but again, refer to your notes and just label them. Worst case scenario, label them to what makes sense to you. And if you work for a company, they will tell you how to label your stuff. Okay, so I have those IK handles there. I will leave the outliner up actually, because I do need to see it and work with it. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll come over here and there's my left reverse heel. and that's my setup, right? I'll use the hotkey Shift H, which is the same thing as turning the visibility on, okay? So I can click it, hold Shift and hit H, as in hello, on my keyboard, and that should bring back my joint system. All I have to do is this. I'm taking my joints here, I'll hold down Shift, the Shift key on my keyboard, click on this plus sign to drop it down, and I'm going to parent each IK handle to the reverse heel setup, the reverse foot setup, the joint that is in that spot. So whatever joint is in the corresponding spot of where this IK handle ends, that's where I'm parenting the IK handle to that joint, okay? So basically, like I have this one here, that one has no IK handles ending on it. So if I go to this left reverse heel, I see that that one is in the same spot as this left leg IK. So in here, I could just even hold down my middle mouse button and drag it onto the left reverse foot, and that's the same thing as parenting it, okay? And I have now parented it there. So I'll check the next one now, the left ball, which I have the left reverse ball. So they're both in the same spot. They're named vaguely the same. So I'll select this child, hold down Control, and select the parent because we're doing an edit parent. So edit down to parent, or hit the P key. And now it is parented to its corresponding joint. And you see the setup right here. The left toe end IK is going to the left reverse toe end. And I could have put that on all of these. Oh, wait, actually, I do have the left rev on all these, so that's good. But I could have put the left rev on the IK. Well, they're not really reverse, never mind, for the IK handles. But basically, this left toe end is going to this part up here. Okay, the left reverse toe end. So, child, hold down Control, click on the parent. That's one of the easiest ways to do it in here. And then either go to Edit Parent, or I'll just hit the P key on my keyboard and it is now parented. Okay. And basically what we've done is that the left reverse setup is going to allow for this functionality. So basically, if I pop in here, it's going to allow this thing to walk. Okay. If I jump to each separate joint of the left reverse heel, so I'll hit the down arrow to get to this joint. This one allows me to kind of get this thing to do a tippy toe. So if this was a ballerina, it could get on its toes very easily. Here's the squash the roach, right? Or put out the cigarette, whatever your character has to do in that scenario. But it allows us to do this animation or this movement much more easily, okay? At the down arrow, this one will allow us to get to like runner's pose and such, and nothing any more special than that because we don't really rotate that any other way. And this one just allows the leg to follow with it. So this is one of the ones that allows it to follow when I move this heel. It takes this IK handle, the leg, and bends the knee and such. So we just created a reverse foot chain setup. Okay. So I'll hit Control Spacebar. That is what got me into this mode. So Control Spacebar to get in to professional mode, if you will. Really, it's more of a full screen mode, but they call it professional mode. Control Spacebar to get out of that mode. And really, it just gives you more real estate to work with so that your eyes don't bleed when you're looking at Maya for 10 hours on end, right? So this is pretty good. And all we have to do is create the controller real quick, which in this tutorial, I'm probably running at a little bit 19 minutes, so it's getting kind of long. So let's wrap this up by quickly creating the manipulator, which is very simple. I'll just go up to create, down to NURBS primitives, and go to circle. Okay, the circle gets created there. I'm just going to move it over a little bit, scale it up a bit. So I'll hit R on my keyboard to get to my scale tool, scale it up like that. And that's pretty good. So I'll hold down my right mouse button, go to Control Vertex, and this is where you would just be able to shape it. So you can select these and kind of scale them in towards each other. And go off of your geometry. So let me turn the geometry on, and I want to go based off of this geometry. I'll hit W to get to my move tool, and I'll just kind of shape this thing however I see fit. to allow it to be easily selectable, but not too obnoxiously large to where it's going to get in the way of things when I'm animating them, okay? So something like this is pretty good, pretty close, and it does mimic the shape of his foot. So, it's kind of a win-win when it comes down to it. And that looks beautiful to me. I don't know about you guys, but I'm going to call that good. So I'll right click and I'll go back to object mode, select this nerve circle again, double click the name, and we're going to call it left foot. And you could call it controller. In this class, we're calling it manip for manipulator. We could just type out manipulator so it doesn't sound too weird. But manip is just for short for manipulator. I understand it sounds like mynip, but it's short for manipulator. And you'll see a lot of people abbreviating things inside of Maya and whatnot. Okay. With this manipulator selected, I'm gonna hold down D, the D key. So the D key puts me into, D as in David, puts me into move pivot point tool. So I can move my pivot point. Okay. And I'm also gonna hold down the modifier key V, which is snap to point. So V is snap to point. I'll hold down D first, and I'll hold down V for snap to point. So D and V together. So D as in David, V as in very, very good. Click and drag this to snap it to that heel. And basically what I'm doing is I'm snapping it to that heel joint, okay? In order to take the heel joint, so I'll select it. I could click the bone to select the joint, okay? When I click this bone right here, it really selects this parent joint, the left reverse heel. I'll shift select this left foot manipulator, and I'll hit the P key on my keyboard, which is a simple edit parent, okay? And now basically what should happen is when I select this guy, I can control the movement of this. If I were to rotate this, get a toe tap, right? So I can play the double bass on the bass drum, right? And I could also get it to do this whole bit, and it takes a leg with it, okay? So what I'll do is have this manipulator selected. I'll go up to modify down to freeze transformations, mainly because we have data in here. I do not need translation data or anything like that. So modify down to freeze transformations, and there we go. We got a nice little connection here. Okay. Last thing, and normally we do this together, so I would have this mirrored from one side to the other, and maybe I'll mirror it in another tutorial, but normally I would mirror all my joints before I do the setup that I did here at the bottom, okay? But basically, just to show you real quick, I'll go up to skeleton down to, where is it, mirror joints option box. I'm mirroring it in YZ based off behavior, and I'll change or look for anything that says left, because everything starts with left in my case, and replace it with right, and I'll hit mirror, and then I have the right foot set up, okay? Now the thing is that my IK handles and stuff aren't going to come over, or they wouldn't come over correctly if I did do that. But I could take these bits and pieces, so skeleton, mirror joints, and it goes based off of my setup that I have already, okay? And there's this one, this one has children on it, so what we did in class was this. I'll just take this, I'll pull the children out of it, so it's just the manipulator, and I'll take the manipulator and I'll go to edit down to group, and basically I grouped it to itself so that I could take the group, and the group has no special significance except to duplicate it. I could take that group, duplicate it, so Control D or edit duplicate. Where's my duplicate? There it is. And then I'll inverse that new group. So group 2, I'll go to scale X, and I'll put, instead of +1, -1, hit enter, and now that one is in place. Okay, it's what we call an inverse, so it just kind of inside outed it from this side to that side. And I'll take both of these, I'll select both of them separately like this, and go up to edit down to unparent. that unparents them, and usually it gets rid of these group nodes. We can change that in the nodes, but I'll delete the group nodes because now I no longer need them. And I'll take the left foot manipulator 1, that is the copy. I'll delete the 1 and I'll change the left to right, right foot manipulator. And now I would have to set this one up like I set this one up, okay? I am going to go ahead and parent this chain. I'll hit Q on my keyboard to select that joint and shift select my manipulator. So I'm just taking this joint, shift selecting this manipulator, and I'll hit the P key this time. That's the same thing as edit parent, okay? And I'll select just this manipulator. Make sure that my data is good. So translations, rotations are 0, scales are 1. And just for good measure, I know that I'm going to have data in here. You guys see this rotation of negative of 180, and I have some weird scales and stuff. I'll just take that, go to modify down to freeze transformations, and now that one's going to be ready to work with. Happy math, all that good stuff, okay? So this setup is where we are, and we named everything and whatnot. Oh, and for this one, we could take this curve and go to edit down to delete by type, and I'll go to non-deformer history and get rid of that creation data that I had down here, okay? I don't need it because I'm not going to manipulate this curve anymore with its creation data. All right. So this is the spot to where my Lake Tutorial 3 takes place from here on out. And you have to do the same connections to the right leg because they are not connected the same here. Okay. These are separate from the spine. All I would have to do is select these two, shift select my spine, or in our case, this one doesn't have it, but you're going to parent these two guys to the hips override manipulator. And basically, it's just another joint in the place of the hips, and there's still a hips joint, okay? But that's part of the setup that we did in class. Let's worry about the legs at the moment. So get the leg set up and follow the next tutorial to finish that up.